Hello, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and today we're going to do something special. I've done videos for lessons, well, technically rules 1 through 8. One is a non-sword video, but I wanted to add an addendum, some other thoughts, and if you're teaching Montante and you're teaching it not just, let's say you're a student and you're trying to learn, or you're a teacher, these are kind of lessons you want to see your students do, or if you're learning on your own, something you want to kind of work on when you're working these rules in Godinho. So this is more of my interpretation rather than rules that Godinho had put out regarding those rules that Godinho did put out. So in Rule 2, we're dealing with two ideas. This is supposed to be a narrow corridor, so if this is my street, what I really want to do is focus on this idea of a thrust. So I'm left-handed, so when I come for this turn, I'm coming from my nails up thrust, moving across to a nails down. The other thing is that I'm changing places. So here, when I turn the blade, I'm going from nails up once again to nails down. When I bring this over, because this is a narrow street, what I want to make sure of is that I'm coming straight up and across. I don't want to kind of hit the wall, so I don't want to bring my blade here. I think that largely this helps you with efficiency. If I just turn that blade, I get used to a very quick turn so that I can then thrust. The other thing is a transfer of place while doing the thrust. So I'm going to step back a little bit. But at this time, my blade is over the black tiles and I'm standing in the gray tiles. So when I do this, when I do that thrust, or I'm going to switch it because I'm going to go from nails up, I want to make sure that I change position. So when I'm done with my thrust, the blade is now on the black tiles, I'm on the gray. When I go to the opposite, same thing. It's going to go to the gray, I'm going to go to the black. And part of this is when you move with the Montante, you really want to be moving your body. So one of the rules there, very quick, is that you need to change places. In Rule 3, we add the Tahoe and the revés. I think I'm going to do this facing you guys. So if I'm here with my back, so I'm backing this way, I'm actually going that way. When I go for my first, actually let me do it from here because it's going to be a Tahoe. If these two grays, these two blocks represent my road, I want to make sure I don't get this caught over here where it would hit a wall. So I think he's trying to get us to control a small Tahoe. So as I come in for my Tahoe, I come through and I make sure this stays within those tracks. And then I step across for my thrust. Once again, changing body positions. When I go to my revés, the same thing must be true. This has to stay inside those blocks. And now I can go to my thrust. So as I come through, I want to keep this in. I don't want to lower too much. I could get caught. I want to make sure that that cuts out and comes through, thrust, cuts and comes through, thrust, changing places. So that's something you should definitely work on, is this idea of a narrow. We'll do wider Tahoes in other rules. So that covers rules 2 through 3. Rule 4 and 5 are also related. And they give us our first high to low, because the goal, and I don't know that I expressed this in my individual lesson videos, is we do want to cut at the legs. And when you do it, so if I'm here coming into that cut, I want to be able to start out high and then swing this low and make sure my blade completes this angle. A lot of people tend to throw this and the blade turns. Make sure when you do this that the blade is clearly cutting across and then comes up. Comes across and then comes up. Across and then comes up. So that's a very important thing you want to be able to do. If you do Rule 4 with Rule 5 with a wide cut, I can either take the full arc and then come around. Once again, the full arc and come around. Or I can step across. So in some cases, the best way to cover multiple opponents is to get across in that cut. across, and cut. I've seen both interpretations, and I think that time and circumstance determines that for Rule 5. But whichever one you do, make sure your blade is consistent throughout that cut and then comes to the guard. It is consistent through the cut and into your guard. For Rule 6, there's a lot going on. We're doing more of our wide sweeps. When we step forward, the idea is never get the point behind you. You want to keep the tahoe and the reverse in front of your body, even if you're sweeping a wide area. If it's a narrow cut, one of the things that Godinho is teaching us is this idea of wrist cuts. We're just kind of pushing the arms, reversing, pushing the arms. This is going to give you a much tighter cut than that wide sweeping tahoe and reverse. As we go along, so now we've done Rule 6. One more thing about Rule 6 is learning to thrust in different directions while progressing. So we also have thrust, 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 thrust. And those two variations from the original, the wide sweeps, we have the wrist cuts, and then we have the thrusts. Each of those getting used to stepping forward. They can also work, though Godinho doesn't explicitly say it, stepping back. So I could, as I do my reverse, step back, step back. I do cover that in the video. The same thing with the thrusts. I can thrust here and here as I step back. So just things to keep in mind. Next, we're going to move on to Rule 7. And in Rule 7, we're stepping around and protecting an object. And there's a couple of things. One is eventually, this is going to be used in later rules. So you want to be used to this idea of moving around in a circle and being able to attacking outwards, protecting the inside. This will give you more space later on. So as I go into Rule 7, I want to make sure my non-dominant foot is what's next to the object, and I want to protect depending on what side I'm facing. So this first tahoe is here. The second tahoe, making sure the blade kind of swings backward as I step, will cut to these people. The next step to these people, and the final one to these people. As I reverse to my thrust, the goal is to get my dominant foot against the stuff. So now my dominant foot is against the object I'm protecting. Reverse. Object near the foot foot near what I'm protecting. Strike. Foot near what I'm protecting. Strike. Foot near what I'm protecting. Cut. Reverse. And when I do that reverse thrust, I'm bringing that foot next to what I'm protecting. Also, when you do those cuts, to make sure, as I do the cut, don't bring the blade straight up, but let it travel behind you. This will threaten people to your side that might think about coming in. So make sure it doesn't stay up, but rather we cut, let it get behind you, let it make that semicircle around. In Rule 8, guarding a cloak, the idea is our non-dominant foot stays in place. So as I step, I'm throwing the weapon into an arc, and as soon as I can get across, I want to go to my second one. 1, 2, and let it swing back. That'll stop people from wanting to come behind you. Swing out with your reverse, and let it carry through. So the more you let the sword do the work, and I feel that's a very important lesson here, is that the sword is carrying through. And as it does, I just let it carry through, carry through, carry through. I'm going to turn this sideways just so that you can see it. So once again, I step through, throw it out there, throw it out here, let it switch positions, throw it that way, throw it here, let it switch back. That'll make it easy to transfer back and forth. So that is my interpretations and a quick review for students doing rules 2 through 8. And we'll continue on with lessons 9 through 14. And I may do a recap of all of those. In the meanwhile, keep training. This is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based in Norfolk, Virginia, and if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. Thank you.